So, respected dignitaries present over here, experts, our staff members, participants. So, good afternoon, all of you. So, we are going to start today's third session. So, I request Professor Palak ma'am to introduce today's expert, Dr. Kiran Trivedi sir. Please, Palak ma'am.
Palak ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Palak ma'am, your voice is not audible. There might be certain network issue. Hello, Palak ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Okay, I request Professor Ghanshyam to introduce our expert. I request Professor Ghanshyam to introduce our today's expert, Dr. Kiran Trivedi sir.
Sir, is it audible?
Yes, audible. Yes, audible now.
Okay. Sorry for that. Dr. Trivedi is a professor at Electronics and Communication Engineering Department of VGC Chankheda, Ahmedabad, affiliated with Gujarat Technological University under the Commissariat of Technical Education, Education Department of Government of Gujarat, India. Dr. Kiran Trivedi is B in the Electronics and Communication, AMI Communication System Engineering, and holds a PhD degree. He is having 24 years of experience in teaching UG and PG students at university level. Dr. Trivedi has organized various workshops on wireless and mobile technologies in India and delivered various expert talks on artificial intelligence, edge computing, and deep learning. He is involved in the development of AI-enabled embedded device-based applications for health and ICT. He has been invited for talks at national and international level. He had been invited to demonstrate the emergency messenger system to the Honorable President of India, Dr. Abdul Kalam. Dr. Trivedi has been awarded as Nokia Developer Champion for the best contribution to mobile technologies from 2007 to 2011 consecutively. He has received the NVIDIA Artificial Intelligence Research Grant in 2018. He is also been awarded as Best Professor for Broader Outlook Learner Teacher and holds AIR India Rank and Bolt Award. Dr. Trivedi was a global winner for OVI App Wizard Contest in India in 2010, and he also won Dr. APJ Kalam Innovation Award at IABS 2017 conference on biomedical sciences. He has published more than 35 papers in various conferences and journals. His 2 patents were published in Indian Patent Journal, and he loved to speak on intellectual property rights. Dr. Trivedi actively organized ITU Girls in ICT Day for the last 2 years and was invited to speak on India's leading FM radio station AIR to promote girls in ICT of rural areas in Gujarat. His teams of students have been winners in hackathons at the state level. Dr. Trivedi has published science and technology related articles in leading newspapers and worked on many innovative projects. In addition to this, he has served in various government committees like TCube Research Coordinator and Student Startup Innovation Policy Coordinator. Apart from this, he is an avid cyclist riding more than 27,000 kilometers so far in total and still counting and loves music. Thanks a lot, sir, for accepting our invitation to deliver an expert talk on sensors data analytics for wearable devices. I hope today's session will be benefited to all participants. Dear participants, have a wonderful and fruitful session here. Sir, now forum is open for you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Palak Madam. First of all, I would like to thank you, Birla Vishwa Mahavidyalaya, for inviting me, and specifically EC Department, Dr. Bhargav Goradia, Dr. Ghanshyam Rathod sir, for giving me this opportunity to talk on sensor analytics for wearable devices. This is one of the very interesting topic actually they have selected for the faculty development program. And fortunately, we are all here to gain the knowledge in this 5-6 days of FDP. First of all, I would like to start with very fundamental things that like why we are interested in wearable devices. You know, previously we were talking about IoT systems and there were a number of sensors we used to connect with the IoT systems. Then came some automation into that. Then AI was involved into IoT and now we are moving towards human. So human is also a kind of a part of IoT where we are actually generating lots of data on day-to-day basis. And we are also considered to be part of the crowdsourcing for the data. Like we always do crowdsourcing for the data for the number of applications. The best example everybody is using these days is basically a smartwatch wearing right now. Many of you might be having a smartwatch from Fitbit or maybe Goki or Apple, Galaxy Gear, and number of watches are there. So as we know that these devices are basically having lots of sensors inbuilt into that, and most of them are running some machine learning algorithms inside that. So it is very interesting that how this is made and how we can do something similar to that. So there are other areas also in case of wearable devices like in Europe and USA. Those who are elderly people are not having any sort of support in the family and they are living a lonely life in the house at the older age. So at that time, they need to wear some sort of fall detection devices also. So if they fall down in the house anytime, the device can inform the 911 or maybe they call it to some emergency number or maybe to the family members or the neighbors. So these are all result and outcomes of such sort of wearable devices which people and company are making on that. And still it is not a much explored area, but the thing is like there are lots of opportunities are relying and we have enough scope to do some research into these areas. So I don't know previous sessions what have been covered so far, but yesterday I had a talk with Dr. Bhargav Goradia and he told that some of the interesting applications have been demoed related to PPE kit and something like that. So today's topic is a little bit different. It is more into the data analysis part, and many of you might have done some sort of data analysis maybe in your work also. But today what I'm planning to show you something is that once we have the data, we need to understand the data properly. And finally, if you do not understand the data properly, if you do not visualize them, if you do not find out the useful information out of that, so we cannot develop any algorithm on that and we cannot implement into the device. So the device cannot work properly. So very important aspect of such sort of wearable devices today is that, like, you might have experienced that you are wearing a smartwatch and you start walking without selecting any of the menus from the watch. What the watch will do, it will automatically identify. So it is constantly monitoring the human activities. So if you start walking for say 2-3 minutes, it will identify that your pattern of human activity is basically of walking. But if you keep the watch in your hand and if you move like this, it will not show you any activity that you are walking. If you start running, it will immediately find that your activity is a running activity. Or maybe if you ride a bicycle, you will definitely come to know that your watch actually indicates you that you are riding a cycle. And whenever you stop, it will stop recording the activity. And finally, it takes a decision that how many steps you have taken, or maybe how many kilometers you have rode the bike. So something similar to that, we need to understand the data. And when these companies have made this sort of wearable devices, they have collected huge amount of data from different people from different location into different situation also. And finally, they have made a very good efficient algorithm out of that, machine learning models out of that, and they have been implemented into such devices. These days, like, people are also monitoring something based on the ECG and EEG also. Even people are working on EMG data also, that is electromyography. It's all about muscle activities of a person. So I have noticed that MIT Media Lab has developed a device that is also a wristwatch, but that is for early seizure detection. If somebody is having a kind of a seizure problem, and we never know that when it will actually shoot up. So they have collected number of data from the people who are having this sort of problem, and they have found that just before 2-3 hours of the seizure attack, there is some sort of change in the activity in the human body, and they have monitored those activities. And then now they have actually prepared some model, machine learning models, and based on that, that has been implemented into that wristband. And the wristband will immediately alert you that maybe half an hour or maybe one hour you may have that sort of seizure activity. So you can save the person, or maybe the person can be alert, and he or she can sit at some places to wait for that activity of seizure. So these are some interesting areas in terms of biotechnology, I should say biomedical sciences, or maybe in case of monitoring the vital health parameters, and a number of areas related to sports and physical activities, because that is going to be a huge market in the world. And after even pandemic situation, it is now like people are more serious into the sporting and physical activities. So these sort of devices are of very useful. Even recently, I have observed that even you can buy a watch for 4,000 rupees, which gives you an SpO2 level as well as the accurate heart rate data. Even the Samsung Gear, if you have seen into that it gives you a stress level. So it's also an interesting paper if you read about measuring the stress level of the person, that how a person's stress level is measured using the ECG data, that is electrocardiograph. Actually, you know that PQRS is the waveform of a normal ECG waveform in any of the human. And when you measure the interval between RR, that is peak R or peak R of the first waveform and the second waveform, you need to measure the RR interval between them. And this RR interval actually defines that how much stress level you are having. So if you have a continuous constant RR interval, it means that you are stressful. It is a reverse actually. It should be different all the time. And if it is constant, it means that you are in a stressful condition. So people have done some interesting work. If you are interested in developing wearable devices, I suggest you to refer some of the papers which have done some extraordinary work into these areas. So this is just a kind of a brief and background about that. Now, today what I have planned is that I have not made much PPTs or anything, but I'm going to discuss something, and I'm going to show you something practically that will help you to play with the data and find out and to solve some problems into that. When we talk about sensor data analytics, we need to understand the sensors first. Like, there are lots of sensors into this, but if you look at the wearable devices are basically going to be worn by the user on the body of the human. So definitely it is related to the movement of the person. Definitely it is related to the direction of the person, or I should say gesture of the person. It is related to the vital parameters of the person, like as I told you, SpO2 measurement, as well as the like blood saturated oxygen and ECG data, EMG data, EEG data. Even people are also using EOG data, that is electrooculography, that is related to eye movement and eye blinking kind of a thing. So EOG is also very much important these days, and EEG is obviously of very important because it's related to brain. So when we are talking about the census data, specifically for wearable devices, it's very important that we understand those sensors first. What is the output of those sensors? So as a researcher or maybe as a student, if you are interested in developing some, working on some dissertation or maybe PhD topic, it is important that understand the sensors first. So what I suggest you all of you is that you go to the data sheet of all the sensors. Like we use accelerometer, we use gyroscope, we use magnetometer, we use light intensity sensors, RGB sensors, proximity sensor, pressure sensor, temperature and humidity sensor. All these sensors are very much important for wearable devices. Even today we use GPS also. So GPS is also one sort of sensor. It actually receives data of the position on the earth from satellite signal and gives some output. So location based services for the wearable device is also a very important area where you can work on that. So GPS I also consider as one of the sensor into that, and every watch has that sort of detail because recently there was a research which is going on for finding out the best route on the Google map based on the air quality index. So usually when you search for some places on the Google map and you enter the source address as well as the destination address, it gives you the best route according to the traffic condition as well as the distance measurement. So shortest route I should say. But some of the researchers have developed that many of the cities are too much polluted basically. And to avoid the pollution, they actually measure the AQI, air quality index of various places on a particular city and find out the best route as per the low air quality index. So that means that where the pollution is less, you can go through that route. So if you want to avoid the pollution, you can find out. So in case of wearable devices also, this sort of areas will definitely help you to explore into that. Now today what I have done, I have connected one sensor with my computer right now. I will show some of the sensor output data, and then we will come to some another part of the session there where we will process this data and we will try to run some Python Jupyter notebook kind of a thing where we will be able to process those data and we'll try to understand what we can get from all. So I will share my screen first and later on I will explain you how it is there. First of all, let me show you. I have connected one device which is a Arduino Nano, which has almost number of sensors on board, accelerometer and compass and gyroscope and all of this. So what we will do is, first of all, we will understand the data, and later on we will take this data, we will record the data, and finally we will transfer it to an Excel or CSV file. Then we will use this data for exploratory analysis and we'll try to find out some useful information out of that. So let me share the screen first. So here I have already sample code for collecting the magnetic field data. Magnetic field data is basically used for collecting the magnetic field in the different direction, as well as it gives you some Tesla value, micro Tesla as output of all the sensor value. And I will show you that how it comes into the serial plotter. If you look at this, so right now on your screen, it is giving us the values for X, Y, and Z, the magnetic field. You can also find the direction into the different, like north, east, south, west. What is the magnetic field in these all direction? Now I move this sensor. So if you can see in the screen, right now I'm keeping it, holding it steadily. So there is no change in the orientation of the magnetic field. But if I change this to some another direction, right now, I think west is south is the direction in which I'm targeting the sensor. If I keep it on east, then it will change the data. And there is a small variation, minute variation in all the data stream which is coming into the screen. If I keep it on the west direction, it has changed. Now on the north direction, it is changed. So this is one of the area. If I move it continuously on a random fashion, then I will have different sample values coming from the magnetometer. If you get the data for this one in terms of values. So here also we are getting some values continuously on the screen, which is based on the sampling rate which has been set so far. If I change this to some other direction, just look at the first column. It is in minus value now. It is increased 42 or the 40 plus series. Now it is plus 20. Now it is again in minus. So in different directions, we are getting some magnetic field. This is because of the Earth's magnetic field. Now coming back to another discussion for this sort of data is that like how this sort of data can be useful for any of the research area in which we are interested. So where this magnetic field data can be useful, can anybody tell me? What are the different application areas or research areas in which magnetic field data is useful? This is basically Earth's magnetic field. This is not related to a human body, but it is related to Earth's magnetic field. Okay, so somebody has replied that navigation and motion. Yes, true.
Mic is enabled for the participants, so you can directly answer even.
Okay, so navigation is right, but for navigation we actually use it for GPS is used for the navigation, but definitely when you are interested in some sort of indoor human activity, we want to find out some indoor human activity where the person is moving, in which direction the person is moving. Say for example, we are having a kind of a underground house, or maybe there is a basement where GPS signals are not hearing, and we want to find out the car's movement or car's direction, or maybe the human activity, in which direction the person is moving. So at that time, if see this sort of data obtained from like northeast, west, south magnetic field, and can anybody tell me that just by getting the acceleration data, accelerometer data, can we get the velocity of the person? Say for example, if I'm moving this Arduino from left to right with some sort of acceleration, or maybe with a continuous movement, or maybe with a speed, or maybe higher acceleration, then definitely we can find out the velocity out of that. So that is also possible that you can find out the speed of a person under the environment where you are not having any GPS with you, or maybe there are no GPS signals available, but you can definitely find out the velocity as well as the direction of the person, maybe in basement or maybe somewhere else in the where we are not able to use the GPS signals. In other application areas also, you can find out the movement of the person based on the movement of the acceleration in X, Y, and Z direction. So that is also possible. So this was what I was showing you. It was based on only the magnetometer data. We are getting magnetic field values from the Earth in the different direction was totally different. Whenever we were moving from one direction to another direction, it was drastically changing. Another application area for this sort of sensor data, and we need to do analytics for that, is that like these days people are talking about lots of recommendation systems. If you open a YouTube video, or if you open a Netflix into your TV, or maybe Amazon Prime video, once you watch a movie of a particular rating or maybe particular genre, then at that time you will be able to see that related movies are also appearing, related songs are also appearing, just to recommend you that, okay, you are interested in this sort of activities or songs or movies or web series, you may like this also. So that is a kind of a recommendation system. But how this sort of magnetic field can be useful for recommendation system is that, if you are creative enough, you can definitely find out that whenever you are moving into some direction, you are getting some sort of output and you are getting motivated for doing some activities. So magnetic field also can be useful into that. Another application areas of such field is that, those who are like, I think Dr. Ghanshyam Rathod sir is working on EEG data, and he must be knowing that there is a Schumann's resonance frequency which is continuously being generated from the Earth. So there is a 3 to 5 hertz of frequency, which is constantly being generated by the Earth's magnetic field. And our human brain frequency, that is ranging from 0 to 30 hertz, is also part of that. So it is like the 3 hertz or 3 to 5 hertz is part of this frequency band. So it is said that, and one research, like there are lots of research papers have been published into that area, and that talked about that, you know, like our human brain is also in tune with the Schumann's resonance frequency. So if you can find out the variation in the Schumann's resonance frequency, we can definitely find out the brain activities and how they are actually impacting to the human brain. That is also one of the research area into which we can work on. If you want to work on the Schumann's resonance frequency effects, that like if you are living on a ground floor in a multi-story building, and if you are living on a 58 floor on the building, then definitely you can find out the effect of Schumann's resonance on the brain. Means it is advisable to live on the ground floor, it is advisable to live on a top floor of a building where it is 50 or 60 story building. So these all effect of the human activities and number of parameters of the Earth's magnetic field can be studied using this sort of sensor data. Okay, now I will go to another code which I have there for collecting the data from the sensors. So I will load this one. Let it get compiled and load into the. This is for simply getting the AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ, that is acceleration in X direction, Y direction, and Z direction, and gyroscope value for X, Y, and Z direction. So we will get all these data, and finally we will try to see that how it can be available into the serial monitor or serial plotter. I need to stop this first. So it will simply print all these values for AX, AY, AZ, and GX, GY, GZ on the serial monitor and plotter. There is a bug for communication port for Arduino Nano 33 BLE sense. So whenever you're using it, for every time it actually leaves the COM port, and every time you need to select the COM port while uploading or maybe while opening the serial port or communication port for plotting the data. So it has been uploaded. Okay, now let us go to the serial plotter and see the values of, if you see the legends on the top left part of the graph, it shows that blue is AX, red is AY, green is AZ, orange is GX, purple is GY, and green is dark green is GZ. So now if I move this is an acceleration in a particular direction, and we are getting the values for all different axes, X, Y, and Z for acceleration as well as for the gyroscope values. If I change in a different direction, I will get the different values. So this is very important for getting the human activities. in most of the wristwatch, what we are using as a smartwatch from Apple, Samsung, or Fitbit, or Goki, or whatever it is, all of are having the same similar sensor, accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometers. And this sort of continuously monitored activities are passed through the machine learning models which have been deployed into this sort of smartwatches. And we are getting some sort of output based on the trained model into that. So it is very important that we need to understand. So as a researcher, what you can do is you can collect such data from different users from in different conditions. And then later on, you can prepare a data set, but you require a huge amount of data. That is very important. It is said that like more the data you have, more the truth you have. So if you have as much as enough data for the exploration, definitely your efficiency or the algorithm will work best and you will get the best output. It will never get failed. One option is that collect the data at your own, or second option is that like there is a very interesting data set available. I would like to show here. I have already opened the website for that. This is one of the best data available for most of the wearable devices in the world today. That is by the UCI. You can download the data from this university's website, and it's available in a open source format, so you can use for your research work. It is all about human activity recognition using smartphone data. So this data has been collected using smartphone. If you do not have Arduino or any other accelerometer or magnetometer sensors which are connected with the normal Arduino Uno kind of a thing, you can use your smartphone also. So this data have been like collected like a crowdsourced data set. Like number of applications were installed into the mobile phone, and the mobile phone like are always with the person wherever whatever they are doing. And throughout the day, the data has been collected into a file, and finally all the data were transferred to a repository and the data set has been created. So it has the data set for most of the human activities. The details are provided into the website from where you can get all the details. So either you can use such ready-made data set, but specifically whenever you are interested in some specific task, I suggest you to create your own data set. Do not rely upon the existing data set, because we never know in which context, which scope the data has been collected so far. Just look at the example of sleep monitoring in the smartwatch. That is also a kind of a wearable device outcome where people are able to find out that whether the human, like a person, was having a better sleep or not. So it actually calculates the total movement in a complete sleep, or maybe the movement of hand, maybe your heart rates also. They are combinedly embedded into an algorithm, and based on that, they find out. So if your resting heart rate is very low at night, you are not moving much, it means that you are into a deep sleep. If a person is not into a deep sleep, it means that the person is moving, or maybe there is a hand or physical movement during the sleep, or maybe the heart rates are not also as per the resting heart rate what it should be. Because whenever a person is sleeping, the heart rate goes to something around 65 to 68 beats per minute. That is what the normal resting heart rate during the sleep. But if you are having a little bit higher heart rate, it means that you are in a stressful condition and you are not able to sleep well. And that is why there is a movement of the body during the night. So this data may be collected in number of scenarios, number of use cases for the persons to do some specific task. But definitely as a beginner, you can start with such data. It is available in the CSV format also. But when you are interested in finding out the pattern, I suggest you that you try to use such sort of a development board like Raspberry Pi or Arduino and collect the data. You can even visualize them and you can find out the activities also. So when you do some specific activity, like see, again, I'm repeating some activity. Now you can see that there is a constant similar output. Now I change the activity. Again, there is a similar but different than the previous activity. If I do only fall detection, say for example, I'm falling this Arduino from my hand. So I will get like this. It is again a similar pattern. Now it is very easy to do analysis for such data, because whenever you are having a repetitive activities, so either you can do supervised learning, supervised machine learning, or maybe you can do unsupervised machine learning. That is also possible, because at least if you do not know, like in case of wearing a smartwatch and finding out the activities automatically. So what does it actually do? It does the clustering kind of a thing. It identifies what sort of common data is appearing from the sensor, and based on that, the cluster, it has a label that it's a nearest neighbor algorithm, or maybe a kind of a clustering of data where we are finding out a specific sort of activities, and activities labeled as like cycling, or maybe walking, or running, or sleeping, or something like that. So that is also very easy, that you can do unsupervised learning and find out some common data points into that, and that is also possible. If you transfer this data into values like this, let me go again to this. So if you monitor the data, you can get all the numerical values from the serial monitor. You need to simply copy all this data, do some activity like human activity. So today's session is a little bit different, but it is basically in the root of the wearable devices, that whenever you are working on some wearable devices and you want to make it a little bit smart enough or intelligent enough, you need some sensors, and you need to collect those sensors data, do some analysis into this data and find out some pattern. Based on this pattern, develop some algorithm or maybe create a machine learning model, try to load into a wearable device or maybe the hardware which you are using into a wearable device, because these days like smart clothing is also available. In smart clothing, it also understands which weather it is, which time of the day it is, like whether it is sunlight or a cloudy environment or it is raining, something like that. So it measures everything. The cloth itself has number of sensors into that, and it understands. So based on the weather condition also, it provides you a heating or cooling kind of a thing. So it's a smart clothing kind of area where even somebody can work if interested. So collecting this data is a very crucial part. You need to be very much careful while collecting the data. Say for example, I want to collect the sensor data for accelerometer right now. So there are a number of data points coming up on the screen. If I, without looking at anything, if I simply select all of them and copy them, then there are chances that whenever I put the sensor on the table, at that time also it has got some movement, and that is going to be a kind of an outlier data. Outlier data is basically the data on the both sides of the data set where we are not interested into those values which are not useful. They are unwanted data for us. It is a kind of a noisy data also, I should say. So we need to remove them. Until and unless we do not explore the data or do not visualize them, we never understand that how it is going to be useful to us. So there is a way to collect this data from such experimental devices that you can simply collect them. You can copy this data, put it into a CSV file format. Say for example, I create a new CSV file here. Initially, I will create a text file. I will paste all the data here. So I have enough data into my this. It's a comma separated values. Need to have labels also here, so I can provide the labels, because whenever the string was initially generated, it was something about AX, comma AY, comma AZ, G, X, Y, GZ. So this was the string format. I can save it as CSV file now. And now if I go to the folder, yeah. So I have a comma separated value of all these. Now, if you look at all the numbers, we never understand what is happening, what was the output of the data, what was the kind of a visualization of the data. We can never understand anything. So as a data analytics of the sensors, we need to use some tools. We need to use some Python libraries. We need to use some sort of mathematical functions and find out what is the output, what are the different data set, what are the different values available. Either we can do pure statistical analysis for this. We can apply different statistical tests on this data and we can find out. But it is better nowadays that we have enough set of rich libraries from the Python for numerical analysis, for visualization, for data analysis, working with the data frames and all of this. So that is what the thing is, what we are going to discuss today. So here we have a CSV file. You can see there are some of the empty lines also. So when we are using this sort of data set, this can create problems because it's an empty field. So basically it is not having any value. So The hardware understand it is a null value or no value is there. It is null. So we need to do such things also whenever we do data analysis for the sensors. As a AI engineer or maybe a machine learning engineer, what is the job of the person is that he needs to look at the data first. He needs to look them physically also, like what we are looking at the data right now. So what we can do is either we can remove such empty lines by deleting the row. So over now it is clear. But when there is a huge amount of data, say for example, there are 56 lines of rows into the Excel or maybe 26,000 of into the Excel. At that time, it is not possible to do manually, and only the computer programming libraries like Python can help us into this. Okay, so now moving to the second part of this. If you have the Arduino Nano with you, you can see that there are n number of examples available into the example section only. You can play with all the sensor data. Like here, there is a library for RGB sensor, and APD is a kind of a library available for the sensor. It gives you the color data in terms of R, G, and B or a combination of that. So you can get all the color information, not only RGB, but it's a combination of all these RGB metrics, I should say. It can gives you detail for gestures also, because this sensor has a gesture. While if you move your hand like left to right, right to left, up, down, closed, far, something like that, you can get all the details, because in our mobile phone also we have a gesture sensor. Whenever we start talking, the LCD gets off. Sorry, proximity sensor is that. It's not a gesture sensor. Gesture sensor is for like moving the photographs in the gallery. You might have observed into the Samsung phone, because they have a gesture sensor on the top front of the LCD. Proximity is for finding out the closeness of the object to the things. This is about temperature and humidity. This is about pressure sensor. You can measure the pressure detail also. This is for accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer. What we have seen so far is one of the example from this magnetometer and accelerometer, what we have seen. And this is about TensorFlow. This is right now not we are discussing, but if you are into ML, you can definitely use that. Okay, now. Now, what I've done for today's session is that I have used some of the PPTs which are already available somewhere, and I found that it is useful for you. So we'll quickly go through some of the fundamentals for sensor analytics using data science for the using Python libraries. Is that there are very much important and popularly used libraries like NumPy, SciPy, and Pandas. NumPy is basically for numerical analysis, SciPy is for scientific calculation, Pandas is for playing with the data sets or data frames, and Matplotlib is for visualization. Seaborn is also a very popular library these days people use for visualizing the data. We are interested only in sensor data right now, so we will talk about sensors data and their output and what we can do with those data. So quickly going through the NumPy, what exactly NumPy is basically. NumPy is a kind of a Python library for the data science or data analytics, I should say. Data science and data analytics has a very small difference in between them. Usually data analytics is all about once the processing and everything has been done, you try to visualize them, you try to plot them, you try to get useful information out of that. But data science is all about exploring the data, getting useful information out of the data, and you can even do and develop number of machine learning algorithms also. So this is basically a difference between data science and data analytics. So what does exactly the library says that it is basically like it introduces objects for multi-dimensional arrays and matrices. You know, in case of number of data, what we have shown so far, what we have seen so far is that like scalar quantity, vector quantity, and then we have tensor. So tensor is basically an n-dimensional data or a feature of an object where we cannot describe them using metrics. So at that time, we need some sort of libraries which can help us to play with this sort of multi-dimensional data. So at that time, you should go for NumPy, and later on, if you are interested in more exploration, we can go for the TensorFlow library. As well as it has a function that allows to easily perform advanced statistical operation on those objects. Either you write the code for statistical analysis in Python and get the output, but when you have the rich set of library which helps you to get all this detail directly from the NumPy, I advise all of you we should definitely NumPy library instead of writing the program for statistical formula or the mathematics what we have in terms of linear algebra. It provides vectorization of mathematical operations on arrays and matrices, which significantly improves the performance because it's already tested and a number of optimizations have been done into the library, so that can give you the best output as compared to what we write in our own program. Second is the scientific calculation library, specifically for algorithms for linear algebra, differential equation, numerical integration, optimization, statistics, and more. So they are a little bit overlapping libraries, but mostly it helps you to work with the linear algebra and differential equations. It is again built on NumPy. So whenever you start installing SciPy as a library, it will ask you to install NumPy and other dependencies also into your Python environment. So these are all interrelated libraries. Pandas is also very useful for playing with the data sets. In case of machine learning, we call it as a data set instead of database. What is the difference between data set and database is as usually when we talk about database, it is always in a properly formatted, structured, and in terms of numerical or alphanumerical data in a tabular format. So that is basically a data set. But when we, sorry, database. But when you talk about a data set can be anything. It cannot be a alphanumeric or numerical values only. It can be a video, it can be a audio, it can be pictures, it can be sound, it can be anything. But when we want to transform them into another format, definitely we can use some libraries to convert them. Say, for example, I want to do some sort of language detection, whether a person is speaking Sanskrit or Marathi or Gujarati or Hindi or Telugu. At that time, we can record the samples of the voice sounds of samples of the voice samples, but definitely we can finally convert them into some numerical values based on some Python libraries available, or we can convert them into a spectrogram and we can use the photographs of those speech signals. We can use convolution neural network and get the output in that sense. But that is why the data set is kind of a different terminology as compared to the database, that it holds anything, whatever you call in terms of data, which is being generated by any of the devices. It is basically a data set. It provides tools for data manipulation, reshaping, merging, sorting, slicing, aggregation, etc. We used to do some bubble sorting in C programming. That at that time we need to write code for that. But now we have lots of ready-made libraries available by which we can do merging of data. Reshaping means changing the size of the data, either X or Y dimension we want to change. Definitely that we can do. Sorting and slicing also can be done. Whenever we have a data set of 1 lakh data, we want to use 80% of the data for training and 20% for validation or testing. At that time, we can easily do this sort of slicing of the data and we can convert the data set into 2 different parts. Even it helps us to allow handling the missing data. As I told you that in a huge amount of data, when in a data set are there, you can definitely find out where the values are missing, or where the values are missing, you can replace with some values also. Either you want to put the missing value with the 0, you can do that in a one shot. That is also possible using the libraries like Pandas. Scikit-learn is also a very popular library which machine learning engineers use. It is for classification, regression, clustering, model validation. It's already having lots of algorithms inbuilt into that, and that can be used. It is again built on NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib. As I told you, that dependent libraries are there. So if you are installing Scikit-learn for the first time and no libraries are installed into our computer, it will ask you that, or automatically it will install into your computer that NumPy is being installed, SciPy is being installed, and Matplotlib is also being installed. And then after it will install the Scikit-learn library. Matplotlib is basically for visualization of the data. We want to plot something and we want to see by our eyes how it looks like. At that time, we need to install the Matplotlib library. It is similar to what we do graphs and charts into Microsoft Excel. You have enough to your columns and rows into a Microsoft Excel workbook. At that time, if you want to see that how the data look, what is the bar graph of the data, what is the pie chart, what is scatter plot of the data. We can plot all these data kind of a thing from our data set using Python library, which is known as a Matplotlib library. It is basically a 2D plotting of the data. A set of functionalities similar to those in MATLAB, because it has also a kind of a plotting facility into that. It gives you all sort of plots. Here only few names are written, like line plots, scatter plots, bar charts, histogram, pie charts, etc. It's relatively low level, some effort needed to create advanced visualization. So you need to write some code for that, that if you want to set the axis, if you want to give a label to the graph, if you want to plot a specific value where some two lines are crossing, then you need to write the code for that, and you need to simply work a little bit to visualize in more advanced way. Seaborn is also a very popular data science Python library for the data science. It is again based on Matplotlib. So if you are directly installing the Seaborn library for the first time, it will again ask you to install NumPy, SciPy, scikit-learn, Matplotlib, etc. It provides high-level interface for drawing attractive statistical graphics. As compared to the Matplotlib, Seaborn is very good in terms of visualizing the data. It gives you more enhanced features and facilities into that. But widely used with the R programming languages, similar in style to the popular ggplot in library in R. Okay, so now what we need to do is that if you want to do some sort of analysis of the data, what we have right now with us from these sensors, what we see in the earlier section of the session, the best way is to do using some Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook, I understand that all of you know very well, but those who are new to this, it's basically a browser-based environment where you can run the Python programs, and it gives you all the functionality similar to the Python command shell, what you have when we install into Python 3 or Python 2 in our computer. And when we run on the command prompt or when we write a .py file as a Python file and into some IDE like PyCharm or Anaconda, whatever it is, we can write the Python program directly into a web browser having a cell structure like this. But you need to install the Jupyter Notebook first into your computer, and some supporting libraries are required or supporting tools are required that Jupyter Notebook will automatically install into your computer, and that can be used so far. So the best, the advantage of using Jupyter Notebook is that as it is a browser-based platform, you can store your data on the cloud also. Even Google Research Colab Research Laboratory is also having the Jupyter Notebook environment. So if you are working in the college and if you want to go home and you want to work on the same project again, you need not have to copy anything. You can simply log into your Gmail account, go to Collaboratory of the research.google.com, open the file again, and so you can start working on that. Even you can do working in the collaborative mode also. If there are different teams working on the same Jupyter Notebook file, you can share with all of them, and everybody can contribute to that notebook. Sometimes it is also known as a Jupyter Notebook because like J is silent in some European countries. So whenever you listen the lectures from some European experts, you will come to know that they are calling it as a Jupyter Notebook because they don't call J is a silent into that. But we call it as a Jupyter Notebook. You need to install into your computer, and it gives you an option to select the Python environment also, like whether Python 2 or Python 3 you want to use. As now Python 2 is no longer supported by Python community, so we should go for Python 3 only, but there is a rich set of tools, libraries, and sample codes available for Python 2 environment. So there is no issue if you go for Python 2 or Python 3, that's fine. Only one important thing in this case of using the Jupyter Notebook is that whenever you write a new Jupyter Notebook, the file will be saved as .ipynb file. If you look at this underline into this data science.ipynb, it is basically the extension of the Jupyter Notebook file. And it says that it is interactive Python notebook, IPYNB. So interactive Python notebook. That's basically the Jupyter Notebook file. But now it has an option that if you have already written the code into a Jupyter Notebook in Python and you want to save it as a Python file, it is having an option that you can download the same file as a .py file with an extension .py, and then you can transfer it to a computer or maybe a Raspberry Pi or any other hardware which supports the Python. You can run directly over there. It helps you to explore the directory structure where the files and data sets are located. So in this example, you can see that there are flights.csv and salaries.csv are the two different data sets in the same folder where the data science.ipynb file is stored. So that is one area where you can write the Python program. What are the different commands you need to use for loading such libraries? So as a beginner, whenever you start doing data exploration or data analysis or sensor analytics using Python, in the first cell, you should have all the import of these libraries. So we usually call include in C or maybe include in processing language for Arduino. But in case of Python, we use import NumPy as NP. So we are actually creating an alias. So later on, we can use NP for accessing the NumPy library. So import NumPy as an NP, import SciPy as SP, import pandas as PD, import matplotlib as MPL, or whatever name you want to use, you can definitely use. You can use matplotlib as MP also, no problem in that, and Seaborn as SNS. So it is up to you what aliases you are using. Now when you write the first cell, so let me switch to the environment where I have already there. So if you look at this, I have created a sample file for this session, sensor data analytics underscore BVM IPYNB. And how to reach to this place, like open the collab.research.google.com. This is the link you need to open. This is an online Jupyter Notebook support. If you don't want to install even the Jupyter Notebook into your PC, the best way is to go to Google Collaboratory. Only thing you need is a Gmail account. Like right now, I have logged into my Gmail account. And once I log in my Gmail account, if I go to Google collab.research.google.com link, it will open this new IPYNB file for me. So either you can do like this new notebook, or maybe you can open an existing notebook, or if you have already a notebook downloaded from somewhere else, you can upload the notebook to this place. Even you have an access to locate the IPYNB file from your drive also. You can locate your data set from your drive also. So Google Drive is also integrated with the Collaboratory of the Google, where you can use everything, but it is residing on the Google's cloud. Later on, you can use it. Once you are done with all of these things, you can even save the copy in a drive of your IPYNB file. You can even post into a GitHub repository also, like save a copy in GitHub also, that is also possible. And here is a very interesting option which is available, like download as IPYNB or download as a .py file. So that is a facility what we are getting in Jupyter Notebook, that every time all these interactive Python notebook files are not going to run on any of the hardware, but we need to convert them into a Python file. So if we click here and download this file, if you look at the file, go to this folder and open this file with a notebook, text file maybe right now. Open with. So if you look at this, some code is already automatically written, but if I remove this one, this is the Python code for exploring some of the features of the data science libraries of Python. Okay, so the first part, what I was showing you in the PPT was this, that import NumPy as NP, import SciPy as SP, import Pandas as PD, Matplotlib as MPL. Right now, what we are doing is, in this example, this is the cell, which is a little bit gray highlighted area, which is known as a cell. You can add the cell from here. You can add the cell from here also. Like go to this part, you will get plus sign, or you want to add some text, which is kind of I should say commented text. You did not have to comment those text. This is the text area where I have written something for explaining, like Pandas is a Python library. Pandas is used to analyze data. When to use Pandas, like it can clean messy data sets and make them readable into relevant. It has functions for analyzing, cleaning, and exploring and manipulating data. So this is about the text, what you can write when you are writing a code. So use a cell to write the code. So I have imported the libraries like import Pandas as PD, import Matplotlib as a PLT. I have not written another alias like what was written in that example. In this example, it was written Matplotlib as a MPL. So you can use any alias for that. Import NumPy as NP. And I want to check the version of this Pandas library. So I have written pd dot dual underscore version dual underscore into bracket. So now if I run this, there is a play button here. So only this cell will run. It also shows you a keyboard shortcut, like if you control plus enter, it will run. So let me run this code. Okay, all the libraries have been imported and the version of the Pandas is also printed here. It is 1.1.5. Okay, now important thing is we want to explore the data set. We want to play with the data set because finally we are using all these data science libraries for the data analytics of the data of the sensors. We need to have some data. So what I have done so far here is that I have created a CSV file. Go to one of the folder where I will show you. Say for example, I have one file here as a Strava 1.csv. This is basically data which has been generated from one of the mobile application called Strava, which is used for doing physical activities, running, walking, cycling, etc. So this is my own personal data which I use for cycling activities. So starting from December 15, you can see that the morning ride and elapsed time, how many minutes I have rode the cycle, distance I have covered in terms of kilometers, what was the relative effort, and number of activities, what was the file name. So this is one of the GPX file which shows the GPS data also. So GPX file gives me my location data on the Google map where I actually had a movement on the earth surface and GPS values for that. So all the data which has been downloaded here are from December 26, 2015 to June 17, 2021. So I have downloaded the data as a data set, but right now we are not going to use this data. I'm going to use only accelerometer data for you. But what is important thing is that just look at the data set. Some of the fields are completely empty. We are not interested into this data. Say for example, the activity year. Here there is no data. These are all empty fields. Then after maybe sometime I have written the name of the cycle which I use for that, and later on I might have changed the name of the cycle. So these fields are having all the details and data, but somewhere it is missing. Similarly, if you look at this part of the data where some calorie and heartbeat data is also available. So these are the heartbeat data on the right side of this. Maximum heart rate while cycling 174, 152, 155, but some data is missing. Maybe on that day I might not have worn the heartbeat chest belt or wearing for measuring the heartbeats. So this is empty. What was the average heart rate? That is also missing into this. Calories are also missing. What the calorie burn count is there. So when you look at the data for the first time, like it is also a kind of a censored data in one way. So either we can remove all these values where there are no or missing data, or either you can replace with some values. But replacing with some values like 0 can definitely change the result of your outcome. So it is advisable that first we need to find out the empty values or empty fields into the data set. Okay, so this was just an example to explore with something. Now we look at this data like test.csv, what we have created just now, where we have given some labels like this. So I have uploaded a file called a.csv into my IPYNB environment or the Jupyter Notebook environment into the Google Colaboratory. So there is an option when you click on this folder icon here on the left side of this pen, click on this upward arrow, upload to session storage. So I selected this file. So if I want to upload another file like here, what I can do is go to download and upload this test.csv here. So now look at this place, it will get updated and test.csv is appearing into the my Google Drive. The only drawback of this Google Colaboratory is that if you log off from your Google Colab environment, only the data will be deleted. So you should keep the data into your computer. The code will remain as it is. There will not be any problem in the code, but if you log off or if you close down this window at that time, it will tell you that the data is automatically removed, because Google is not allowing people to keep the data for a longer time. So whenever you are moving out of the session, it will remove the data. Right now, from the morning itself, I have already some of the data which is open and I have not logged off from my account. So all these files are available here. But if I log off again and do login again, I will not be able to find a.csv, a.xls, test.csv, etc. This is just for information so that you can, you don't surprise that where my data is. But every time you start working on the code, you have to upload the data again. That is only drawback. Okay, now coming to the next part. Now what we have done is that we want to create a data frame and we want to read the file of a.csv. A.csv contains similar data like test.csv, what we have created from the sensor data right now, collecting or copying the data from the serial monitor and copying into a CSV file, and then transferring the same test.csv file to the Google Colaboratory. Okay, now this is the syntax for using the data frame. It is known as DF in Pandas. And how to read the CSV file is that there is an option to read the CSV file like PD. So PD, whenever you click on this, PD is basically a kind of a Python environment to access the data, and you can access those data by reading a CSV file. So pd.read_CSV, and you have to provide the name of the file. Right now, the a.csv file is already in the same folder of my code, ipynb, that sensor_data_analytics_bvm.ipynb. I do not have to provide the path. If it is located somewhere else in my Google Drive, I need to definitely give the path to that particular file or folder. So right now I can directly write a.csv and can run this cell by Control Shift or Control Enter. Sorry, I will do Control Enter. Okay. So what it does actually, it displayed all the data of my a.csv file. I'm simply reading the CSV file, but you know, this CSV file contains almost 1559 rows into that, and that is not possible to display all the data all together here. And that is why, as a by default option of pd.read_CSV will display only first 5 values and last 5 values, and here it will show dots only, so that there are n number of data available in between last 5 data and first 5 data. So in my file, there are different columns like AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ, and all these values are there. And this is basically the index, which was not given by my file name, but it automatically creates when you read the data frame from the CSV file. If you have an Excel file, you can read _Excel and write a.xls. That is also an option. There is an option to read the JSON format file like pd_read_JSON and a.json file name you need to write here. So this is the syntax for reading a CSV file. So now the first job is over, that we are able to access and upload the data into the environment where we are writing the code. We are also able to explore the data by displaying some of the limited values in front of our screen. Okay, now it is over. So it shows that there are 1559 rows into the a.csv and there are 6 columns into a.csv. Okay, now there is another command which shows that length of data frame. So if you run this, let me clear the output first. Write simply length into length of df. So it will give you the length. Length means the total rows. That is the length of the data frame, 1559. If you write shape, instead of in the CSV file, right now what I have done here, I have actually written the df here. If you look at this, if I delete this and if I run it again, what happens? Let us see. Let me clear all the outputs first. Okay, now going back to the cell 2, that is df equal to pd.read_CSV, and I'm reading this file. See, nothing happened. It has read the CSV file, but nothing has been printed. Now, if I want to those initial 5 and last 5 values, what I can do is I can add a cell here and I simply write df, or maybe print df also works. And if I run this, I got the values. So the reading is not printing the value, but when you exclusively write df or write print df, it will print the first 5 and last 5 values of the data set. Okay, this is about length, what we have run so far. The shape of the file, that is what is the dimension in terms of this one. Okay, now there is an interesting thing that now you can play with columns, rows, and particular values into that. If I write df and ax is basically only one column where we have data in terms of ax. Like this, this test file has a ax. We are interested only in this, in a.csv. So what we will do is, we want to find out the maximum value into that. So let us run this. So this is the maximum value in ax column. Okay, we want to see that what are the different names of the columns and what is the data type. So write df.columns. It will show you that the index ax, ay, az, gx, gy, gz, all these are available here. And the type is object. Okay. If you want to print only the values of a z column or ax column or gx column, how to do that? So instead of az, I'm interested in gz. Sorry. because GY is one of the data available here. Let us print that. So these are the data of only GY column. It will print all of them, but again, as there are 1559 data into a column, it will only display you some of the values. But let us try and do something like writing 3 or something like that. It will only print the third value into this, or maybe you can have a range of value from 0 to 13. So it will display you values from, so you have a control over all these operations of the data set, that you can take some values, you can even remove some values, you can display some of the specific values like that. Okay, now there is an option that you can convert this CSV file into an Excel file or an JSON file or any other file format. Conversion is also possible. So df2_excel and give a name of the file a.xls. Right now it's already there existing here on the left side. I have converted into a.xls, but now let me create another file called b.xls. So the command is df.to_excel. Into bracket, we need to provide the file name in which we want to store. So the file will be created in the Google Cloud, will be stored here, and it will be available here into this area b.xls. So this file will appear here and will be visible to us. Now you can see that there is b.xls available in the environment where we are right. Now there is another command to do analysis for the data frame using the head function, that df.head will display all these parameters and values. Let me start. The first head is the first initial part. So basically initial 5 values of the data frame of a.csv. So ax, ay, az, gx, gy, zz, and all these values for the first 5. Similar to this, there is a command called trail. df.tail will display you all the values for last 5 values. So 1559, 1558, etc. All these values are being displayed here. You want to get information about your CSV file. What does it contain? What are the different sections available? So this information is about data types mainly. So it shows that range data is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Means these are the columns AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ. And these are the total count into all 6 columns. કોઈ null છે તો નથી, there is no null, there is count is null. So, and what are the data types of all these values is basically floating 64 values, floating point values into that. So that is also possible. How much memory is being used, because whenever you are deploying a machine learning model, you need to understand that it's going to have a very less memory. And whenever we have a huge amount of data set, we are going to train a model, and that will also be a very smaller size. So here the data contains only 73.2 MB. Another command is to describe the data set. df.dataset, df.describe will describe with some interesting results of all the values. When we write df.describe, it will display you the count. So that in AX, that is column AX, accelerometer data for X direction, Y direction, Z direction. There are total 1559 counts of the data. The mean value of acceleration in the A direction is 20.9. Here it is 112.3 and it is 36 here. What is the standard deviation? That is 11.02 and 65.05 for AX, AY, and AZ, etc. What is the minimum value? What is the 20%, 25% of the data, 50% of the data, and 75% of the data? And what is the maximum value? So this is a describe is a command which will give you all the details all together. Now there is another command called, like, we want to apply something, a series kind of an analysis to that, and we will count those values. So this is a total series where we have almost all the data which is not available in the form of a null value or a zero value, and that is why we are getting this sort of not available data. And these are the total rows and columns for that. If you want to simply print the columns, df.column is the command. Then df.drop duplicate and in place is equal to true. This is a very interesting command. We'll see again. Just hold on for a while. As I told you that in the data set, when we open some of the data and we find that there are no values, or maybe some values are 0 or some values are missing into this like this. All these values are missing here. Some values are missing here also. This value is having a 0 value. Value having 0 count is good, but missing value is definitely a problematic thing, because in total count or finding out the mean or median, we need to count the total count, and that is why it affects the total result, or maybe it can give you an error also. And that is why sometimes it is needed that we want to replace the duplicate values with some same value, and we want to remove them. So let us run this df.drop. We are actually dropping the values of the duplicate data. Many times it may happen that there are similar data. Say there are 5 similar rows into your data set. That is of no use actually. And if you have all the similar data, that is going to change your result for calculating the average, mean, median, etc., and maybe for even creating the model. So if you run this, okay, we want to print that whether any null value or not is null. Df dot is null is basically for finding out that whether there is a null value or not. There is no null value right now into this. If you open this a.csv file, let me download this file. So right now, if you look at this data, there is not a single field empty. Every field is filled up with some data, maybe minus or low value, higher value, but it is not empty. Till up to 1559 values, all the data are filled up in the rows and columns. And that is why it displays you that in the first 5 fields, false, even in the last 5 fields, and all the dots. So there are all columns and rows are filled up. So it is all false. If there is one value is missing, then definitely it will display you with true. There are some missing data into the data set. We want to find out that how many total empty values are there in the data set. Maybe like for the acceleration in the X direction or Y direction, there are total 3 missing fields or null values, and 3 missing fields in the Y direction also. So if you want to count that in my data set, there are total 1559 rows into 6 columns. So that is the answer what the data field are there. But if you want to calculate all the sum, you will get the result like this, that in AX df dot is null dot sum is the command for the pandas data frame to find the null value and to get the sum of all these values. Just hold on for a while. Hello. Yeah, actually, I've received in the morning an email regarding the chairperson of different committees. But the thing is, like, I'm right now having a commitment of Natal FTP, and I was taking a session into that. So I informed them in the morning that I will not be available between 2 to 4. Then I will join, no problem into that. So, okay, fine. No, yeah. Okay, so have you sent the WhatsApp group invite? Okay. I will join them. Yeah, definitely I will do that. No problem. Thank you. So this is just to get the total of all the empty values in the data set. These all functionalities helps a lot when we have a huge data set. Right now it's very small data set, so we can even just by looking and exploring the data set or opening the data set, we can get all the details. But it's useful when we want to find out just by having a single command. Okay. Now, okay, you already know that there are some empty values and you want to drop them because you want to remove them from the data set. So just drop NA means remove all the data from the data set where there is a null value, right? df.drop NA will actually remove all the data where there is a null value. But right now there is no null value, so it will show you like the same rows and same columns as it is intact. There is no change in the data set itself. Again, it will show you some initial head and tail values of the data set, initial 5 values and last 5 values of this. Okay, this is again a very interesting part. Initially, we had seen, just look at the first one command I had explored, df.describe. This is describing the complete data set regarding all the values of all the columns and rows, all the columns AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ. But right now, we are not interested in explaining about the complete, describing the complete data set. We are interested, for example, in AX only. At that time, we need to write the code like this. df, then only the AX field or the column, then dot describe will give you the output for average mean standard deviation for AX column only. So many a times it is required that we have 26,000 columns and we need only columns for getting the mean value or standard deviation from them, or maybe the maximum minimum value at that time. df into AX and then dot describe is the which can be used for this. This is a for counting the values and displaying some values for AZ, that AZ and like DF, that is data frame, into bracket dot value counts and head 3. So initial first 3 values. If we change this, say, but don't do anything and simply display, it will display you some initial values of that. If you write 10, you're forcing the values to display more in number. So it will display you 50. So that is a count of all the values specifically for AZ. It will also give you a kind of a correlation between all the different columns. Correlation is something like related to AX. If AY is increasing, then it is 1. If it is decreasing, then it is -1. If it is similar, it will be 0. So a kind of a correlation what we get in terms of AX. So if you look at the header and the column like AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ, and on the index also we have AX, AY, AZ, GX, GY, GZ. So everywhere it shows you 1. It means that all the data are basically in terms of positive value or increasing order. So if AX is increasing, AY is also increasing, it means it is 1. If AY is decreasing as compared to AX, it is -1. Or if it is same, it is 0. In our case, these are the accelerometer data, and whenever we are moving the accelerometer, we are getting change in AX, AY, AZ in a positive way. So no value is basically decreasing whenever we are doing this sort of activities. When the data was stored for a.csv, it can be -1 also, but this is simply just to get the correlation between different data columns in the data frame. So that can be checked by df.corr. Now we have something interesting to plot. We want to plot this data and to visualize them like AX, AY, and GX. I'm not taking AZ here, but taking GX. And we are using matplotlib functionality. So we have actually imported matplotlib as PLT here in the initial few lines. This is the matplot library imported as PLT alias, and now we are using the same alias here to plot the data So just look at this. PLT.plot is a kind of accessing the plot function, and we want to plot X and Y in the as a XY graph, basically X axis and Y axis. So what we have as a X, what we are taking is we are taking data frame of AX data or AX column. That is an X axis, but AY as a Y axis. The data frame for AY or acceleration in the Y direction is as Y, and Z as basically Z axis as a gyroscope data for X, but we are not using right now for plotting them. So what is the function, or to write the syntax for that is that plt.plot and provide the X and Y value. And then you have to use the function like plt.show. You want to show the graph. So this graph will be displayed here. You can see that there is a change in correlation between the graph of values on X and Y. So on X, we have these values for AX, and here on the Y, we have AY. Now let us play with some of these details and data. We can do something like this, that we are plotting 5 values for X axis. And here we are plotting some values ranging from 15 to 20. These 5 values we are taking for Y axis. Then change the see the change in the graph. So it has changed now. If we take only 2 values, and if we take values ranging from 13 to 15 here, we can see a graph like this. We change this to 4. So we have some sort of plot. So we can explore the data at a minute point in the data set, that okay, many a times it happens that there are some critical threshold values or critical conditions in the data set, which is very important to explore to understand. Maybe there is a spike of the data due to some or another reason in vital parameters of the human body, or maybe the wearable device which we are using for collecting the data. And if there are some minor changes into the data in a drastic way or impulsive nature, at that time we can use this sort of controlled environment to plot the data and to see where the data was having a change into that. So just look at this value, that here on the graph on x-axis, like we have 190 value, and after 190 value there is another one is 191, but in between that there is a heavy rise of the data on the y-axis, and that shows that there is some change here. And that can be used as a understanding of the data set, and we can even keep in mind that okay, there was a change, drastic change in the data set on X, and acceleration of X and acceleration of Y when we had this sort of data. And we can definitely find out these data also, because what we have written in the code here is that we are plotting the data for AX, and again we are taking the value of that data set initially from 0 to 4. So the first 4 value in the data set actually for AX and the first 4 value of the data set for AY are being plotted here. We can change this data set value, and we can explore into other areas like here 100 and 104. And here we can do a same thing 100 and 104. So we are taking the values in the data set in AX column and AY column, which starts from the 100th count, and taking only 4 values from 100 to 104 and plotting them to see whether it is having this. It's a straight line right now. So that shows basically something like this. If you do not do anything and remove all this, it will simply print the complete graph. Most probably it would be a straight line. So like this, so it has plotted all the values. But this is just to show you that how we can have a controlled environment on this data set, data exploration and visualization. We want to plot the bar plots, like what we do for comparison of the data and the values everywhere in that. So here we have plt.bar is a like syntax for that, and we want to write the x, y, and z data. So we have already defined these x, y, and z here: x df, ax, y df, ay, and z df, gx. So these are the 3 axes, and again we need to write plt.show to plot them. Right now there are too much values into that, though it is completely blue because all the bars are very close enough. We are not able to distinguish them with our eyes, and that is why we are not able to plot those values. if you plot something like this one, let's see if it is possible to display something. So again, it has plotted everything. If you don't write anything. It took 4 seconds to display the graph because there are 1500 values altogether, and that is why it took even 4 seconds to complete the graph and display here. So this is for bar graph. Right now we are not able to see all the details value directly, but let us see to plot only two values. Values ranging from 0 to 2 for y. So here you can see there is a change now. There are minute change into this. It will not run because there are difference of values for comparing the data set. We need to take only 0 to 2. So there are two values, three values what we are taking. Here it is 4. So I need to write 2 to 4. Okay, it shows some change in the bar graph. So this is the first section of X and this is a Y. If you want to plot the histogram, we can simply plot a histogram for X or Y or Z. So this shows that histogram for all the values of Y. Y is basically defined as a df of ay, that is ay acceleration in the y direction, and the data has been plotted like this. Again, we can have a control over here and we can plot some values ranging from 0 to 2, and we can plot them later on. So this will plot these two different values. So now we can see that, see, these are the two different bar graphs or a histogram. Now we have an option to change the value to 0 to 6 because it is visible to us instead of a complete values. So these are the different patches available for different objects. Try with 10 data also. No, it's now all merging. From 30 to 35. We are getting all these values. They are almost similar to this in terms of a histogram. Now there is an option to plot a scatter plot. Scatter plot is basically for showing the distribution of the data, how they are scattered into the environment or the axis, and we can see all these details by plotting plt.scatter. That is for x and y axis. X is basically what you know, it's an acceleration in the x direction, and y is an acceleration in the y direction. And we are plotting the scatter plot data for 5 points, that is ranging, sorry, 30 points, that is ranging from 0 to 30, that is 31, and 5 to 35. So let us run this. So we are able to see that there is a change here in the initial phase of these values, but we can also try with some another one, say 100 to 110. Here also 100 to 110. So these are the 10 different values. If we change this to 1000 to 1110, it will give you the error. Why? Because there is a change in the value what we have seen taken so far. So it should be 1010. Let's show this. Let's show this. So you're able to see this. We can also label the X, label the points also. Sometimes it is necessary to, like if you are writing a research paper and into research paper, you want to plot all this graph as a proof of concept that you have done some exploration and you are interested in downloading this. So you can take the graphs from here, take a link of this graph, and number of things things are possible. You can even add the label to the graph, add the label to the data points, similar to this. So this is the command what I'm right now showing you is for specifically for doing that task. That plt.title. The PLT can be anything in your case whenever you are writing your own code in alias. So PLT can be PPT also. So plt.title is my title. plt.x label. What label you want to give to the x-axis? That is AX in this my case. plt.y label is AY for acceleration in y direction. What is the title? Again, it's duplicated actually, so I need to remove this. plt.title FTP demo and scatter plot, what we are plotting right now. Similar graph which was printed previously will be printed here, but having a different here. So FTP demo is the name of the graph. Here it is AX and here it is AY. All the values are being plotted similarly to the previous graph like this, but now having a layer graph. So you can provide title, x-axis title and number of legends, number of colors also you can set. That will be automatically done by this thing, Matplotlib. No need to set the colors for any of the graph. When you have number of graphs all together, the colors will automatically be taken by the Matplotlib library. We want to sort some values now into the data set. So we want to sort the values for AX. AX is basically a column for acceleration in X direction, acceleration in the X direction, and we want to see that how they are sorted. So right now I'm not taking this line, simply sorting that for AX value. Look at this graph, look at this outcome of the cell, that it has plotted all the values in again for all the 1559 values of the row and 6 columns, but it is in the increasing order, ascending order. But if I don't want to do like that and I want to do it false, ascending is not required. So what I will do is AX and then comma, the syntax says that you have to provide it as a false. So that will be printing you the outcome in the reverse direction. So now you can see that it is changed to the ascending order as false, and finally it will up to 0, decreasing order. Another interesting command is df.mean that will give you the mean value of all the x's directly. Similarly, we have df.median will give you the median value of all the columns ax, ay, az, gx, gy, gz, etc. Standard deviation for all these values separately. When you describe the data frame, it will give you everything for the complete data set for different columns also. But whenever you are interested in taking the values for specifically as a columns, getting the only statistical outcome for standard deviation, you can use df.std. You can provide some values for x's also. Like if I write something like this, let me try. Write ax like this. So maybe it can give you me for an error. Should not give me the output for that. It's not defined. Okay. So this is a very basic part for data exploration, data analysis, using some of the data science libraries for sensor data. And what we can do later on is that we can develop, we can create some data set, we can play with the data set, we can find out some data, we can visualize some data. And later on, what we can do is we can prepare the data set for final training of the model. So this is all a kind of a pre-processing, visualization, making the data set ready for the specific purpose, because many a times it happens that until and unless we don't do data cleaning, data pre-processing, data merging, or the various applying various data science techniques to the data set, we can never get the output in terms of proper model. So this is what I tried to describe today using one of the sensor data what we have taken so far, and we try to display a number of things. There are I tried to cover only 25% of this today because we have a time constraint, and that is why it is not possible to cover everything. But the thing is, like, this will give you definitely an insight and hint when you are working with any of the data science related project or maybe AI or machine learning project, this can definitely help you to use these sort of libraries, and then you can use your Python file into your project and apply all this for your purpose. I think this is enough for today, Ghanshyam sir. We may have some question answer session, and later on we can finish this session, because I already have got a call from AICT for one of the evaluation for Toykathon, and they are waiting for me. So I need to join them immediately.
Yes, participants, if you have any query, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Your microphones are already enabled, so you can unmute yourself quickly if you have any queries.
You can also post your question into chat box also. I have opened that. So if there is there any question, I will read that and will reply you.
Ask the questions related to the session. We will have discussion about the various other activities later on. If you have any queries related to session, please ask. Okay, so sir, I believe that there is no queries from participant, and we, on behalf of BVM Engineering College EC Department, I request Professor Palak Madam to give vote of thanks.
Yeah, okay, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. You have explained how to collect data from sensors and analyze. Your live demonstration of data analysis gives clear idea and lead us to do research in the field of communication. Even you have given knowledge about open sources available for the same, as well as libraries for machine learning and data science. Even based on the demonstration, we come to know how to generate graphs will help us to put as a proof of concept in research paper writing. Thank you so much, sir, for your efforts and commitment. From entire team of FDP and BVM Engineering College, I would like to thank you, sir. You
Thank
may
you.
now you may leave the meeting, sir, if you wish, sir.
Okay, thank you so much to all the participants for listening, and thank you so much to EC Department, BVM Engineering College. A special thanks to Dr. Bhargav Gorodia sir, Palak Madam, and Ghanshyam sir for inviting me. Hope this session will be useful to the participant for their students also, or for their ongoing research work, or those who are interested in doing some sort of starting PhD. This will definitely give you an insight to explore more into this area of sensor analytics. This is one of the emerging area, and people are having lots of opportunity in this. So thank you so much. Have a nice day, and happy evening to all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
I think.